And his last day in being the head of the Baltimore City public school system is June the 30th. Now, for me, let's be clear that June the 30th couldn't come soon enough. Now, I know 2 weeks ago they had bulk trash day in the city of Baltimore. That would have been an excellent time. That would have been an excellent time for us to go down City Hall, to go down to North Avenue at the so-called command center and move on to Housing Authority, move on to Annapolis, to pick up all this bulk trash in the state right now. But again, as I said before, that Andres Alonso, the big jabroni is and was never qualified. He was never qualified, quantified, or sanctified to be the head of the Baltimore City public school system. In fact, they did as they're looking at trying to do for his chief of staff, Tisha Edwards, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But they gave him a waiver. They gave him a waiver as they did with Bonnie Copeland because she wasn't qualified. And this is only happening in urban school settings and mostly majority black school settings where they're bringing in these corporate CEOs. They're bringing in these corporate CEOs, if I can keep it real. They're bringing in these technocrats, these bureaucrats that come from Wall Street, whose job is to treat the Baltimore City public school system and the public school system as Wall Street and look at, of course, how they can come in and cut and gut seasoned teachers, seasoned principals, seasoned personnel, not allow them to collect their pension, and then look at how they can take that money off the top. Then come in and, of course, look at student fair funding and how they can use the money that now follows your students in order to get money and to make more money off of your students as well, which becomes the proverbial cash cows for Andre Alonso and, again, those in the Baltimore City public school system. So now we got the word that Andre Alonso, last day is, of course, June the 30th, but we broke this story last week, over this past week, and for some time now, if you've been listening to the State of the City, that Andre Alonso was on his way out the door. But, again, as we're looking at that, as I said before, that Andre Alonso, who's trying to get this monkey off his back in more than one way, if you know what I mean. Clearly, again, as I said before, came in, Baltimore City. He lowered, of course, the standard. He lowered the bar. And those who brought him here lowered the standard and lowered the bar. But, of course, all of this was on the back of Bonnie Copeland having to step down after, if you remember, the news that we broke when I was over on WOL regarding the scandals with the boating trip with Eric Letzinger and others that were part of that and the cover-up that went down. But I won't go into that today. But, again, as I said before, Andre Alonso is leaving. And please don't believe that he's leaving to go care for his elderly parents. If they were elderly 6 years ago, then they're elderly today. If them two old crows was elderly 6 years ago, then know that they're elderly, just as elderly today as they were 6 years ago. But clearly there's more to this story that we're not being told. There's clearly more to this story that we're not being told regarding why Andre Alonso, who just signed a new contract last year, and of course he'll have an opportunity to collect that pension perhaps. Time will tell. But again, as the old folks say, what does not come out in the wash may come out in the rinse, Andre Alonso. Whatever don't come out in the wash may clearly come out in the rinse regarding, again, Andre Alonso. But I clearly see at least 3 reasons, or 4 reasons, or 5 reasons, and several reasons that Andre Alonso is trying to get out of the door right now. And I'll share some of them with you before I go deep into this conversation. But you have right now the legal department, which I understand they have numerous lawsuits that the Baltimore City public school system is facing. And you would think that the news media, from Jane Miller, the I-Team investigation, maybe some of the others, would go and ask, can we ask the legal department what lawsuits that we're looking at right now? We do understand that the legislative audit came back and talked about, again, construction money, not only construction money, but vendors that were not paid, talking about contractors maybe that were not paid or did not pay others as well. So the question we got to ask, was there a kickback somewhere to Alonso or somebody else over at North Avenue that these individuals and these businesses and others found themselves being, of course, a victim of? We understand, of course, the Filipinos, because we're probably the only city in the United States where more Filipinos are teaching in our system than anyone else. And nobody has never stopped to ask, how are all these Filipinos ending up in Baltimore City public schools? How do they make it from thousands of miles away and they get waivers? They even have those who handle their visa at Miles and Stockbridge and some of these other law firms maybe, what's that one that Neil Duke came from? And I am going to talk about that in a few minutes. What's that one that Neil Duke came from? We're going to have to look into that. But clearly, you have these Filipino teachers and Filipino principals that now can't seem to have their visas renewed or have their waivers and qualifications renewed, that understand that they also are part of, we'll say alleged, of a lawsuit against Andre Alonso and the Baltimore City public school system. But nobody has never done an in-depth investigation to say, how are these Filipinos getting in the Baltimore City public school system? You have very few Filipino students, so the question is, how are these Filipino teachers and principals, somebody's getting a kickback somewhere for bringing them into the city of Baltimore, and we've yet to see and understand how they're getting here. And when you got, again, seasoned teachers that can speak English, that have a better relationship with our children, seasoned teachers, unfortunately, are being uprooted to bring in the Filipinos, which, unfortunately, sometimes is a cheap labor pool as well, But let's keep going as we look at this story of Andre Alonso and several reasons that he may be on his way out the door. One, of course, has been the lawsuits. Of course, as we're looking at the cheating scandals where you've had numerous principals or several principals and some of these blue ribbon schools that myself and Sister Vicky, who's out there, I'm sure she's listening, Sister Vicky and others, that blew the whistle regarding the cheating scandals that were going on. And even, of course, talked about Andre Alonso and how they were covering up these cheating scandals at these blue ribbon schools, which would probably make what happened in Georgia. But since most of those teachers and principals there were black, then, it sells better in the news media. It would be a shock. It would shake the foundation of this country if they started bringing in people who look like Alonso, Michelle Rhee, and some of these others regarding their cheating scandal. But we do remember when Michelle Rhee in Washington, D.C., who was just a second grade school teacher here at Harlem Park, before John Hopkins took it over, of course, with that talent youth program or youth talent program or whatever it is they're running over there. But she was a second grade school teacher. They took her to Washington, D.C. Then she became the poster child. She became the poster child for how to so-called restructure or come in and cut and gut a school system, and then lied and said to the teachers in Washington, D.C., that we don't have enough money to keep you. And then when the audit was done, come to find out that they were not in the red, meaning the Washington, D.C. system, but they were in fact in the black. And now Michelle Rhee is in court in a lawsuit by teachers and principals who were let go, only to find out that the whole premise for letting them go was a lie. Now, if she did that, what do you think what do you think this fraud Andre Alonso has been doing? What do you think that Andre Alonso has been doing to teachers and others inside of the school system right now, man? But again, as I said before, so you have the principals now that have to be put back in these positions after they've been cleared of the cheating scandal, but they don't want that information to come out, of course. He's been sitting on these stories. And, of course, we do know of Andre Alonso, as, of course, Brother Muhammad broke that story some time ago, his boy toy. Says we'll say alleged, being on the down low and low down, that his boy toy spilled the beans regarding Andre Alonso, his misdeeds, his greeds, and his crimes of omission and commission that he's been committing. And so therefore he is definitely sitting on the hot seat. And we do know, of course, of many of his crimes that the Baltimore City Police Department and even members of the school police have helped to cover up. That members of the school police have helped to cover up, from Toby Goodwin, the head of school police, who came from the sheriff's department. So you know that Toby Goodwin wants to be a good, he wants to be a good team player. I like Toby Goodwin, but he wants to be a good team player. And Brother Muhammad had his confrontation with Andre Alonso. It was Toby Goodwin. It was his driver, Ralph. Ralphie Boy. I know he out there listening. Oh, Ralphie Boy, who wanted to cover it up along with Norm Coleman. And these are police officers that know, or some of them at least have waivers, I guess, to act in that capacity, to cover up the crimes for Andre Alonso. But they do know that Andre Alonso, who probably should be in not celebrity rehab, but they do know that he's a drunkard. They do know he can't handle his alcohol. I don't know if he's using hard drugs, but they do know that he cannot handle his alcohol. And they do know that he's had some fights with his boyfriends, and they've had to come and take him out the house. So much so that the community association president, we'll say alleged in Federal Hill, asked Andre Alonso to move out of Federal Hill. So here's a school superintendent acting more like a parking lot attendant, and a juvenile delinquent who was asked to move out of Federal Hill into Butchers Hill. And you can check the record. Anybody over there North Avenue listening know what I'm saying is true. So now he had to move out of, again, the neighborhood that he was living in because he couldn't handle his alcohol. And you had officers had to come pick him up, separate him from his boyfriend. They tell me he beat him one time so bad, they had to take him to the hospital. But you would think Jane Miller and the other ones that would talk about Kevin Clark, who got fired for beating, supposedly putting hands on his girlfriend. You remember that, the former police commissioner. But when it comes to having the white complexion connection or the right complexion connection, then they know how to cover up for Alonso. But let's keep going here. As I said before, and then you have the recent audits talking about, again, missing money that can't be accounted for regarding contractors and vendors, and, of course, the so-called Transform Baltimore program, which is not about transforming but conforming Baltimore, which is really the race to the top money, and this race to the top money is a continuation of No Child Left Behind, and when they are done, there may not be no childs behind left. There may not be a public school left, which is the mass privatization of public schools in the city of Baltimore as they're doing around the country. The majority of them are in black neighborhoods. Majority of them are in black communities. So Andre Alonso was brought in after Bonnie Copeland had to step down and then go back to the Fund for Educational Excellence along with, what's his name, Mark Friedrich or Feddick, who comes from, and keep your eye on him because he could be your new superintendent or CEO, who came from, what's that, Leg Mason. Leg Mason ain't never gave a dime to Baltimore City Public Schools. They got plenty of tips and plenty of, what's the other one called? Pilots. But Leg Mason ain't gave a dime to Baltimore City Public Schools since I was a student in Baltimore City Public School. I don't know about you, but Leg Mason when Chip Mason was there. Then this guy, Mark Friedrich, now he's out there leading a rally and speaking in Annapolis for Transform Baltimore money, which is supposed to be $1 billion over a 10-year period or something regarding those numbers here. But yet they say the money is not going to go to Andre Alonso and, the Baltimore City Public School System. And who's the treasurer? CFO. We got to look into that. I remember it was Walker a few years ago. But nevertheless, the money goes to the Maryland Stadium Authority, a quasi-public-private corporation, which is no such thing as quasi-public-private corporation. So the money goes to the Maryland Stadium Authority, and when you start looking at who's on that Maryland Stadium Authority and see how well connected they are to the governor and the mayor, such as her deputy mayor, Calipio Pathamos, then you see that these are the same criminals, man, that helped to create the problems in Baltimore City public school system. But Andre Alonso now couldn't get his hands on the money. So that could be another reason why he's leaving. And they'll go and bring somebody from Fund for Educational Excellence or the Open Society Institute, since they're the only ones that they've talked to about Andre Alonso leaving. And Alonso came in to continue what Bonnie Copeland began with. First, it was what was that program they were pushing when they got rid of your zoned high schools? They got rid of Northern, got rid of Southwestern, got rid of Walbrook, got rid of Southern, got rid of Fairmount, and I think there was maybe 2 or 3 more they got rid of. Lake Clifton, they got rid of Lake, for some of you who went to Lake, right? You know what I'm saying is true. So when you have your reunion, it won't be a reunion of Lake Clifton, it'll be a reunion of Civitas. It'll be a reunion of Civic Works. It'll be a reunion of Reach. It'll be a reunion of some of these other schools that they've created, charter school number this and charter school number that. But all this was done by Andre Alonso to continue what Bonnie Copeland started, which was called the facility solutions. And we said it was the final solution for Baltimore City Public Schools. Then they came up with the middle school choice option after they closed your high schools with very little opposition, and they used that thug. Who was broke, disgusted, and could not be trusted, Brian Marsh. You know him as Dark Gable. You know him as the Phi Beta perpetrator, if you're out there listening, who was nothing but Martin O'Malley's right-hand boy that was supposed to be running Martin O'Malley's MBE program, and we found out that was a fraud. We found out that was a fraud with Brian Marsh, Owen Tunkin, Ron Lipscomb, and some of the other ones. That was Brian Marsh's only claim to fame. And he went to City College. And of course, I don't have to tell you about City College. I don't have to tell you about the things that went on at City College. And if you don't know, as one of my regular listeners, they'll tell you about City College and the boys from City College, how they became somebody else's toys and playboys at City College. So they put them in positions of power, but they don't have power and can't execute power because what happened to them at City College. But let's keep going and you get that kind of knowledge. But Alonso comes in and continues the, again, facility solution.